the Germans then give up a lot of the mass bombings of the daylight, which they did, into 1941, and they started the night bombing. We could see the glow in the sky from London, you know. And we used to go out, I mean, when the siren would go in the evening time, and it would go, that was a warning. And then you would hear it go, and it would go burp, burp, and that was overhead. That was a warning they were over the top. And of course, me and my dad, he didn't want to be, missing anything, so straight out the door we went, didn't we? Down the bottom of the garden, up on the wall, we could have a view all round. I can honestly say that I was never bored in my boyhood days in Kennington. I had too many, I had my hobbies, life was good, it was good. I mean, everybody had a catapult. If you didn't have a catapult, everybody played marbles. You don't see that now. I mean, it was a good life. It started off as a bit of a busy night it was going to be. About 9:30 to 9:45, the sirens went, and we heard this big humming row. And the German Daimler-Benz engines were so you could tell a Rolls-Royce Merlin easily. So we had the night fighters. You knew when there was a night fighter about, you knew when the German bombers. At that particular evening, we had got up, we'd been to bed, but we got up, me and my father, and I put my trousers over my pyjamas. My dad put these trousers and that, and his top uniform jacket on guard. But we heard this, we could hear these guns down in Sandyhurst Lane firing at something, so naturally we were straight out in the front garden. And we were looking and listening, and you could see the glow in the sky over Maidstone Way. That was London. That was the parts of London that was well alight. And this, when we got out, it was, I suppose, I don't know, getting on for midnight, must have been. We stood there and we heard this plane, and the engines seemed to be cutting out and starting up and cutting out. And that was right over the top of them old laundries looking towards Ashford. And we heard it getting nearer and nearer, and my dad said, I reckon that's one's coming down. We were damn sure it wasn't one of ours. And then we heard a bang, and then we heard another bang, and then we heard this big bang. Silent. So my dad said, he's come down in that field back on Church Road. So, of course, blimey, we up through that little alleyway. That field is, you go, I think it's about a quarter of a mile. You go part of the way, and then there's a little bit of a hump, and then right into the distance was Church Road. And we could hear something in the as we got nearer. And don't forget, it was when the searchlights kept going out, it was dark. And when we got there, we could see this shape, There was a flicker where one of the hawthorn trees, there was a hawthorn tree there. There was another hawthorn tree over the other side of the fuselage, and the nose was in between them. It looked as if the tree had grown up through the wing, on the leading edge of the wing. This starboard engine was flickering, and there was a hell of a smell of glycol and aviation fuel. And somebody said, well, don't say that, get this bloody engine, put that fire out, Up in the nose was a lot of sounds going on. There was no light in there, only by the light of the searchlight. And there was this chap who came out of a top hatch behind the cockpit. He came out and he come off the wing and he come down, stood there, and Mr. Swan, who lived in near the church, he was a solicitor in Ashford. I think he's then gone now, but he was in the First World War, and he got to this German, and he could speak perfect German. And of course, what we did, I mean, there was Peter Huckstep, Mr. Huckstep, I think Mr. Field, and my dad and me. We were practically then the first ones there, you see. Well, Mr. Huckstep, Peter Huckstep, they were then getting into the fuselage to get these blokes out, you see, because what was going on was a hissing row coming from the middle of the aircraft. It was just a hissing row all the time. Well, Mr. Swan and this chap, he was a big 6-foot ginger-haired fella, all in his flying suit, and they stood between the trailing edge of the wing and the tail, and Mr. Swan asked him what that row was, and he spoke to him in German, and he said, "Neen Bum, Neen Bum," meaning to say no bombs. Well, it did work out afterwards. They dropped all their bombs in London, on London, and they were on their way back to bomb up again and come over. Because that lot up there, it didn't finish near 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you see, that raid. And on that raid, they supposed to have shot down about 33 to 38 Germans that night. It was one of the biggest raids, and one of the last big raids, and one of the raids where the Germans really suffered, you know. But anyway, we got 3 out, and we got them, they were all injured, the 3, and we dragged them away from the aircraft. There was some more hawthorn bushes a bit higher up, and we put them under them, you know, under there. But anyway, we did get all of them, eventually got all of them out, you know. We put the flame out, but it still smoked the engine. Well, that was all right. And we got over that was an oxygen bottle that had been punctured on landing. It had been damaged, and that's what was making the hissing row. The next thing was to discover that we had a Mr. Field who lived in this new house, and it had a spiral fence, the type that you roll up. If you're a countryman, you just roll them up and then set them out again. Well, the port wing had demolished all that, hadn't it? This wing, he discovered, was in his garden. He wasn't far from his back door. It stayed there a week in that position, but the pilot who came down and shot it down came from Westmoreland, which was a night fighter base in them days. He was a bit disappointed because he shot it up from underneath, but you see, when it crash landed, the undercarriage was up. So what damage he did was it raced out when it got to the trees, because that bomber must have come very low in over Burton Road, and that bank, near that mound, he just cleared that, and that's where he hit the ground. After about an hour, it had crashed. A lot of people started arriving. By that time, local policemen arrived. Well, then people had to be shooed away. They started shooing people away because I suppose a lot of them were souvenirs, looking for souvenirs, but they'd already been dealt with. You know, whatever as we got them out, you see, to take things off, as all night, get their helmets off, even revolvers disappeared. I don't know, you know. there was a lot of people there after about an hour. Then the army arrived from Spear Point House, because the army was in residence there. They came with a 1,500 weight truck. They came with half a dozen soldiers with rifles and fixed bayonets, and them on the ground. They guarded them until they come with another vehicle. I think it was an army ambulance, and they loaded them up and took them there, and then they eventually went to Canterbury Hospital. And it was there a week, and on the Saturday afterwards, they had dismantled it. They took the wings off, the tail off, and the fuselage and everything, the engines and all that, and they had a big 60-foot Queen Mary, and they loaded it on, took it away. And that's my story that I can tell you. The chap who was 6 foot and ginger-haired came back 30 years later. They all went to Canada, but he didn't see them again. He ended up as an English teacher. And when he came to see Mr. Field and Mr. Huckstep and Peter Huckstep, he was white-haired. He came to apologise to Mr. Field, but not in his fence then. Him and his wife were having sitting in the front room, and the doorbell went, and they opened the door, and he said, "Well, you don't know me, but I know you. I knocked your fence down." Rather a nice little story, that.